Today on the Star Trek Universe podcast, we're going to be covering the first of the Star Trek short treks. This one's called Runaway.
Yeah.
Right after this. Welcome to the Star Trek Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
I'm David C. Robertson.
David C. Robertson. I'm excited because we are, for the first time, covering new Star Trek. The last couple episodes, our first few episodes, we talked all about what we thought about old Star Trek and the different series. Tonight, we're covering a thing that just came out, still fresh on my brain. How'd you feel in a non-spoilery way? I don't think there's that much spoiler that can be had, but what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Sure. I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I think quality-wise, I would say it was fun, but on a couple of the other metrics I like to judge Star Trek on, such as continuity and substance, I think it was a little thin.
Yeah, like I always enjoy Tilly.
Yeah, me too. Love Tilly.
But this short left me with questions, and not in a good way.
Right. Not like what's going to happen, or like I'm interested in pursuing this, but like how the hell did they do that? Like there's a few of those.
Yeah.
So let's get into the spoilers. Full spoiler alert for this episode. The short trek. I really did enjoy both the character of Poe, played to perfection. Like I really enjoyed the just sort of alien nature of the way she acted. I really enjoyed her and Tilly's dynamic. They're both sort of similar in a way, and both sort of bucking their family. I enjoyed all of that. And but there are just some things that just felt like they're going for more silly fun time than they're going for any kind of substance. And this had like sort of an eco-friendly message to it.
Did it? I didn't remember that. I mean, there was the I guess so, the dilithium, the renewing dilithium. Which by the way, Scotty was totally confused by in Relics. So back in TNG, when Scotty shows up he was like, "What is this? You're going to completely destroy the thing." I'm like, no, ours rejuvenates. So it's a little weird that they're so familiar with that kind of technology in Discovery time, 10 years before Kirk.
Well, to be fair, it's not in the public yet. So it's very possible that it took a few decades to get it rolled out. Not to mention, it's very possible that Poe went home and they murdered her as like she could have been overthrown because she's destroying the economy. Like, and given that Scotty was still confused 30 years after the fact or whatever, 40 years after the fact, it's very possible that she was like imprisoned or murdered.
And
kind of a bummer that's canon.
I somewhat feel like I kind of need to know now what happened.
Yeah.
Because like they really try to set it up to where like they had this, like Tilly and Poe have this bond by the end of this thing, and they didn't have that kind of time to play with it.
I actually feel that way. I did. I bought the bond between them.
Oh, that's nice.
I did. I thought, given the place that Tilly was in her life and the place that this girl was in her life, and I think that the part that's underplayed is the great risk that Tilly is incurring here. Like this should have been a little bit of a heavier moment when she's disregarding Starfleet regulations, and they could have turned into that and had it have a little more weight to the entire episode, where she like thinks what she's doing is right. Like maybe Poe mentions that the Federation is just as grubby with the dilithium as her government is. like, well, why don't she could have said something like, why don't you just turn it over to the Federation? I believe the Federation would do the right thing with it. Like maybe Tilly's this idealistic, and Poe says something to the effect of, no, we've had Federation envoys, and they're just as much wanting to destroy our planet. You know, like something like that. They're hurting my twin too.
Which all of that was a little flimsy. Like I was like, that's. I don't know. The twin thing it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird because it definitely seems like an outdated religious belief that this girl has, that they were born at the same time as the planet. And Tilly says that's not possible because the heat would have done it. And she says, you have no idea what is possible. And it just seemed more religious fervor than scientific look at what was going on, which is fine. I definitely don't mind there being someone with religious fervor on the show for whatever they believe.
Sure.
But it was weird that Tilly just kind of dropped it. But I don't know. Maybe that makes total sense.
What else is she going to do?
Right, that's true. It's a good point.
If anything, I think it was sort of lazy to introduce it in such a limited format.
Yeah, I think that's my overall problem with this, is they took really big swings with this first short trek. Mm-hmm. I would have been fine with just like a day in the life of Tilly.
Absolutely.
Like this feels like it should have been given, if they're going to set her up to have like a relationship with a queen of a strategically important planet, and they're going to have like all this stuff happen. Like this seems like it could have been a major arc on the show.
I agree.
It doesn't feel like a short trek, and I'm torn because I've seen a lot of these sort of shorts in the past. Like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. did it. A lot of shows do these sort of shorts.
Yeah.
And
they always come off a little half-baked.
They do. They come off a little half-baked. And normally, the reason I don't like them is because just nothing really happens. So I hate to be standing on the side where I'm like, they took too big of swings. Because one of my biggest problems is always that they don't take swings at all. It's always like, this guy walked from this place to this place, and they had a conversation. Okay.
Right.
And the whole idea is to give you a deeper look into the character. And I think this episode was trying to give you a deeper look into Tilly's character. Talk about her mother issues, talk about her like lack of confidence. And then the real arc of her in this short is that she learns some confidence. But
yeah,
I don't know. It just like the fact that she turned out to be a princess felt like really shoehorned to me.
Or a queen,
right, about to be a queen. She was heading back to take part in her coronation, where she's probably going to get beheaded by the masses for wanting to destroy their economy. Just given that the dilithium recrystallization doesn't happen in Star Trek for a while,
right.
And I'm all on board with this. We talked about it last week, not wanting Star Trek to be a mouthpiece for either side. This message was just like a clear message to me of like, don't let corporate interests delay progress. Granted, it was a very small sliver. That's the thing. They introduced so many ideas in this little short trek that I'm like, I would love to see a whole season about them trying to convince a government to like, or like an episode at least, to convince a government to like give its technology over that could save worlds worth of mining and lots of lives. And that's a very interesting idea, but it's not even the main thrust of this episode. This episode's about Tilly gaining confidence. Like that's the main, and I'm like, you didn't have to go so big with it. You could have had her have a good idea in engineering or something, that saved the ship or like stopped something bad from happening or stopping an overload or something smaller in scale. And it almost felt sort of like Doctor Who in a way. Mm-hmm. Doctor Who is not afraid to have every episode be like world ending, you know?
Right. I really don't mind that they were, making a point about, corporations harmfully setting a precedent for an entire planet or anything like that. I mean,
Sorry. I didn't mean to imply that I did have a problem with that. I think what they've done here is it's definitely it's a message against corporate interests being controlling the government, which I am all for. I think that anyone who thought you should keep destroying planets when you have a viable technology that could replace it is dumb. Now, what bothers me about that, in the slightest way, is that you could have more mirrored our current technological issues if you also gave some problems or some they set up a straw man sort of again. Like they just sort of set up this idea that these men who their logic is easily defeated. Like her government wanting to continue to destroy their planet to maintain economic superiority is in this a very simple to defeat logic. Now, if they'd gone into, yes, but if we do that, our planet really will go through these specific hardships. And is it worth us, saving our miners if it makes our economy go through this horrible hardship that we can't face? Like, there could have been a two-sided argument, and it just kind of felt like they made it a one-sided one. And that's my fear with them having sort of a bent for Star Trek. Is I feel like in the original series they would have made that point, and they would have said, here's the downside, but you know what, it's worth it because the future can be brighter, and here's how the Federation can come in, and as the Federation we can bring you into the Federation because you're sharing this technology with us, and we will protect you economically, and we'll protect you and give you the resources you need, because it's better for all the galaxy if no one has to do dilithium mining anymore.
Right.
And instead it was just kind of like, you make the hard decision to protect your twin. I was emotionally impacted when she was talking about her twin. I found that emotionally effective.
Yeah, I thought it was, kind of silly, but
right.
I'm an asshole, so
it is silly in a scientific way, but in a classic sort of just loving your own environment, loving your planet, it's not silly.
It's interesting. It was interesting to me that they chose that path with it, because it seems like if they were people that were predisposed to religious thought that propelled them to calling their planet their twin, why the hell are we having a dilithium mining problem in the first place? Like, if everyone, or a huge majority of the people, including the queen or the soon-to-be queen, believe that their planet is their twin, right, why would they do anything to hurt it?
Well, we don't know that the whole planet feels that way. It could be that she feels that way. She is someone who has a lot of religious fervor for her love of her planet. And I think this exists here on our planet.
Yeah.
There are people that feel very strongly about protecting the environment, and there are people that feel no, our personal existence and our economic thriving is more important. And so that is a point that could have been made in a more nuanced way. But yeah, it is interesting that they gave her such a religious fervor. And she's the only representation we have of her species.
And I'm not even sure, I wasn't it felt kind of religious, but also it felt, like a person on, Tumblr who identifies as being a squirrel. What are we doing here? Is this an actual practice? Is this a belief? Is this just how she thinks she is? What?
Well, it sounded to me like at least her mother believed it as well and raised her to believe it.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something that's been passed down to her. It's not like an aberration. But even if it were an aberration, there's just nothing. There's nothing harmful about believing your planet to be something to be protected. I think that's a good impulse and a good thing. I don't think that. Whereas thinking you're a squirrel can kind of have negative consequences to your social life. Where are you going to store all those nuts? Is my question.
I don't know, man. I've often wondered. She won't respond to any of my. This is a person. This is a person on Tumblr. Actually, I think me, you, and Ryan and Spencer sat down and wrote a message to her.
Oh, I don't remember that.
A few years ago.
Do not recall that.
She did not respond.
I'm sure she's tired of getting squirrel-related questions.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're going to be out there with an interesting belief like that is very different, and you're promoting your interesting belief on a site like Tumblr, it just seems like it's people with honest questions. You might want to answer them. Right.
To be fair, we were very respectful.
Yeah, I'm sure we were. But there's interesting dynamics. Anytime you're speaking to someone of another species, there's always going to be interesting dynamics that you may not see from your high tower of privilege. Oh, your human privilege is showing. Maybe that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, my high tower of privilege from the front seat of my car as I'm barreling down.
Poor squirrel girl. Well.
Nah, she's the unbeatable squirrel girl. That's the thing.
That's true. Very lucky, that one.
Marvel reference.
Yeah. MCUcast.com. So...
That was shameless.
Always shameless. Luke Cage just says always forward. I say always shameless.
I hear this is a good show.
Yeah, it was a good show, and it got canceled, and I'm bummed about it.
Oh, I'm talking about Shameless.
Sorry. Yes, that show's all right. I saw the first couple seasons.
Gotcha.
Didn't love it. I liked it. I really wanted to like it because I love William H. Macy so much, and so I really wanted to love it. And he's good on it, and all the kids are good on it too. I just couldn't bring myself to care about their situations. I don't know.
Yeah, I had it described to me, and I went, "Nah, we don't visit that side of the family."
We don't visit that side of the family. Why would I want to watch them on TV? Dave, you mean you're not that side of the family?
Lord, no.
My family, we are definitely that side of the family.
We are not that side of the family. Crazily enough,
my family, we are somehow the black sheep of both sides, but in completely different ways. My mother's side of the family is very proper, and they're very Southern Belle and we just don't buy into that. We don't care too much about the finer things or presenting ourselves well to a certain type of aesthetic. And they all really do. And my mom falls prey to feeling some sort of guilt about it sometimes, but we just don't. Our family's no, we just live our lives. We don't care about your antebellum ways. And then the other side of my family is super homebodies. My dad's parents are they would not let them have friends growing up. They wouldn't let them have anyone over. They also wouldn't let them go do things. All of my cousins are really restricted from even going on trips and things. They're just really homebodies. And my family is just kind of normal. We're not super adventurous, but we do things. But every time I talk to that side of the family, they think I'm insane for driving to Atlanta. And so they're just I'm beyond the pale for having done some tiny things in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get little snippets of that from everywhere, but
you
just gotta there's a mismatch.
Gotta live your own life. And that brings us back to Runaway, where Tilly's being very judged by her mother. She has a certain sensibility that she thinks that Tilly needs to live up to, and it doesn't have faith in Tilly, is the truth of it.
I was more interested in that storyline.
Me too. I would have been really fine with this episode if it was just Tilly. A day in the life of Tilly, and her like having to be brought low by talking to her mother, and then going to work and being successful in her regular job, and then seeing that like bring her out of her funk and bring her to where she was like understanding like I have value. I kind of would rather that than her have to get a queen to tell her that she helped her out.
And I'm so confused. Does the ship not have like intruder sensors? Does it not like? Do they not have sensors that say, "Hey, someone's beaming off world"? Also, how can they beam off world? She said you're a long way from home.
Yeah,
she shouldn't have that capability.
Yep,
yet.
that technology we know from the recent movies that technology didn't exist yet. Even in Kirk's time, much less now in Discovery times.
Well, I don't know about, were they in warp? I don't think they were in warp.
That's true. You're right. That was beaming through warp. I forgot about that. I was just thinking it was distance. But yeah, they do. In every Star Trek I know of, there are distance barriers to transporter travel. And I don't know. They just don't seem to pay attention to that stuff at all. And I get it. I get like, I'm going to tell the story I want to tell. But like, if you just pay attention to the restrictions, a lot of times they make the story better. Like it would have been more interesting to me if they'd had to like work around some security issues, you know? But they just wanted it to just be about her having a conversation with a queen, and they kind of ignored everything else.
Yeah.
They could have had this conversation when they were like surveying the world she was on, and avoided some of these security issues that we have. I don't know. Of course, then they couldn't have used the sets. They would have had to create a world.
Yeah. It would. I just needed like I could have just used some like throwaway lines, like a throwaway line about, you know, Michael Burnham or Saru okaying it or something.
Yeah, or yeah, exactly. Like go to Burnham or like have her help with get bypass security or whatever. Saru, which I think Saru would have understood the situation. But it's just sort of the limited format of having these Trek shorts or short Treks. And then trying to do such a big thing with such a limited format.
Yeah, they just tried to cram too much into this one.
Yeah.
They just tried too much.
And again, I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, but they just
it was all right.
It just felt like a Harry Potter movie when they started throwing food all around. It felt like someone had put a spell on the mess hall, and like I was just like, what? How is this even being accomplished? Like we never understood. Was she doing that? It was some sort of short in the electrical, but why did the electrical short out? I didn't.
Yeah, and all I was thinking was, well, this is some time we could have used for much needed exposition.
Yeah, and it was just like, let's have lots of fun and flashy things. But again, it goes back to the problem I have with this Star Trek in general right now, is there's not an entry point for new fans, and I feel like this is not. Some of those things, like food being thrown across the room in a silly way, and her like convincing the alien with ice cream. Like I liked those jokes fine, but it's just really not what I come to Star Trek for. And I'm like, who are you aiming this at? If not like the Star Trek fans who are paying for your service. I don't know. It doesn't feel like Star Trek. It doesn't feel like what most of us come to Star Trek for.
I don't know what everyone's coming to Star Trek for, man.
It's just my point is it's nothing like what we've gotten from previous Star Treks. Star Trek is normally a little slower and a little more about the exposition and the storytelling, and a little less about a food fight. And right. I'm a guy who can enjoy a food fight and an ice cream joke. But it just is. It isn't what I normally come to Star Trek for. I'll say myself, because yes, I don't know what all Star Trek fans think by any means, and a lot of them aren't like me.
I don't care that it's not what I come to Star Trek for. Like at this point, I don't really come to Star Trek for anything in particular. I'm just kind of open to whatever they're bringing to me, but. I don't mind those sorts of. I don't mind a food fight and eating ice cream or whatever. But you know, when we're talking about, and by the way, they're not like restricted to 10 minutes. Like, you know, they can do, you know, 10, 15 minutes, you know?
Right.
I don't know how much they can do, but all the promotional materials I've seen have said 10 to 15 minutes. So, but what bothers me is when silly things are brought in and it's at the expense of exposition or, you know, logical plot progression. You know, things that I feel make a piece more enjoyable and cohesive.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think a lot of that comes from them trying to introduce not only big ideas, but a lot of big ideas in the course of a 10-minute thing. And there's just not enough time to pay all of them off. So this could have been a story of this alien if they wanted to, and had her, you know, encounter the ship, and maybe even in secret, like maybe she doesn't even get discovered, like, and it could have been about the alien, and I would have been okay with that, or it could have been about Tilly regaining confidence through any other actions, but making it about an alien intruder, which is already could be a short by itself, Tilly gaining confidence, which could already be a short by itself, a government deciding whether or not to do the eco-friendly option over the economic option.
That's a season.
That's a season. Like that's, or at least a full episode. Like that could easily be tackled and dealt with and really dug into. The arguments of like, you can really make the argument that like, oh, you want us to start recrystallizing, or give the technology a way to start recrystallizing dilithium, but if we do that, this family will starve. You know, like this mining family will starve, or our entire economy will have so much sucked out of it that it's going to be hard. And then you have to figure out that third way Kirk thinking of like, how do we solve that problem? And that's an episode. That's a really great episode of Star Trek that could be done. But this was like, I have 10 minutes and we're going to do all of it. and that's just a lot of things to do.
I wonder if they'll pick that storyline up. I say probably not.
I say probably not too, and I think it's sad. I think that would be a great storyline. But and maybe it's because this season, at least this first season, they really didn't do any episodic Star Trek, which I think is a mistake. I don't think you have to forego all episodic stuff to do a good serialized story.
Yeah.
I think they could have easily had a few of these just like really nice Planet episodes that tie into the larger story. And I mean, they did it a little bit, but it was always like Klingon War, Klingon War, Klingon War, and then Dark Universe, Dark Universe, Dark Universe.
Right.
They didn't have any good episodes, and it's another issue of not being able to bring new people in when they have to watch a whole season to get a full story. And you will rarely hear me argue for episodic television. I'm very much a serialized guy, but there's a balance where you can do both, and tell a good episodic story while contributing to an overall serialized story.
I've always wanted to see sort of an anthology, like a Twilight Zone type of Star Trek show that like could any episode could take place anywhere, at any time frame. They could do 24th century. They could do mirror universe. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Within the confines of budget, of course.
Sure.
But as far as like characters, characters that are like regulars that are just there every episode. I feel like I've seen every version of episodic Trek, and I never need to see it again. Give me a storyline. If we want to do a Star Trek anthology show, I'm behind it. Let's make it as much like old school Twilight Zone as we can. Like, let's really explore some of those strange new worlds. We can even play with, social issues just like the old Twilight Zone did. But I really I want a short on the normal show, I want a short season, and I want it to be a strong arc, season long. But that's just me.
That is my normal impulse as well. I guess just because I've been watching some original Trek lately, and I enjoy a good self-contained story. And we're sitting here talking about this story. Okay, so you've got stories that I think could be great to tell, like this story of this planet we're talking about. I forget the name. Zihia? Poe's planet.
I don't even know. I don't remember.
I think it's Zahea or something like that. Poe's planet, this dilithium-rich planet. That's an interesting story. It's a story of disruption. It's a story of technological disruption, bringing about economic change that could impact the people, but could also greatly help the planet. And we're facing that right now in like our current world. We're facing the disruption of things like solar and wind, trying to replace coal and gas, and you have all these entrenched interests trying to hold on to a dying industry. And there's all kinds of real world arguments that happen around this stuff, and
it's kind of an allegory for Star Trek itself if you think about it. I'm just kidding, everyone.
It's probably honestly a good allegory for a lot of fandoms, because you get entrenched in what you believe that thing should be, and you hold on to that instead of. And I mean, I'm as guilty as anyone.
Sure.
But, and that's the thing, is like, I always say this when it comes to the fandoms. I am someone who doesn't mind changes. I don't really like canons to have changes that can't be resolved. I really hate that. I don't like canons to be ruined. In my mind, it kind of ruins them. But I just don't like my story to change at its heart. Like the heart of who, and I know Dave does the DC On Screen podcast. I do the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast with our fellow J friends, and we so we have differing opinions probably on Marvel and DC to some degree, but like for me, the Superman movies sort of removed, the most recent ones, the Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, removed the core of what I felt like Superman was. And like, I know you probably don't agree with that completely.
I don't know what you think the core of Superman is.
Exactly, and this is what I'm getting at. Like, everyone has a different idea of what that is, and so everyone can't be pleased by anything, pretty much. And so the deeper a fandom gets, the more entrenched people you have. For me, I mean, we can get into it if you want, but I didn't want to get too far into it. But like, I just was trying to think of an example of a story that did that, and I just don't want Star Trek to lose what I think Star Trek has always been about. When it's at its best for me, which is, I really love original Star Trek and its third way thinking that is picked up and continued in DS9, and presenting the best Star Trek to me presents problems that have legitimate grievances on both sides and discrepancies that both sides could be understood, and then coming up with a way of resolving those problems, because I think that's what our world really needs. And I fear Discovery losing that. And that's what that's what I'm looking for Star Trek to have. Instead of just like Klingons bad, Mirror Universe bad, Mirror Universe people bad. Like, maybe you could have made the Mirror Universe kind of bad, but still kept like the Captain Lorca could have been a good guy. Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, but he didn't end up that way. Like, it just kind of.
No, I liked the way that played out.
I did too. I liked it. I'm just throwing out, like, there's options where, like, not everyone in the Federation on the evil side in the Dark Universe has to be evil. And I know they've done that in other Treks. It just kind of felt like simple fear the other kind of storytelling, and having just like a simple enemy, which is something the original series did. For sure, with the Klingons, they just kind of made them a villain for the most part. But I thought we kind of...
Well, then you look at something like Day of the Dove, and,
I'm not familiar with the episode.
Oh, that was the episode with Kang. But basically, there's like an alien that's like some sort of entity that feeds on hate, and is the Klingons are on the Enterprise. Like there's they're having sword fights with the crew, and they eventually realize that this little being is like fueling their hatred and their anger towards one another.
Right.
Kirk appeals to their better sides, and they all have a good laugh at the alien, and it flies away because there's no more hate to be had.
To me, that is a perfect summation of politics right now. I think that most of our divisions in politics, there's obviously differences in what different sides in politics believe, but for me, a lot of what's going on is the people in power using fear to stir us up to hate people that disagree with us, so we can't find the third way thinking. We can't find that sort of solution to an issue because we're always thinking the other side is so far from us that there's no compromise to be had. We just have to fight them, and that is the problem with our politics today. I really believe that. Yeah. I believe that there are people that are so far apart, sure, that will never come together, but I think there's way more of us somewhere in the middle that could find common ground. And if all of us would work on that, we could solve a lot of issues.
Yeah. The first I think it was the first iteration of the Klingons when we first see I think it was Core in the original series. They're teetering on the brink of an altercation, but then Kirk finds a way to resolve it peacefully.
Yeah.
And Cora's it's a shame we didn't battle. It would have been glorious. But
right.
They still presented the Klingons
as people, as
to some degree, at least.
Yeah, right.
As much as they presented the Enterprise crew to be people,
right? Maybe Romulans might be a better example of an enemy in the original series that's kind of treated like an enemy.
But even I wouldn't even say that, man.
All right.
I wouldn't even say that.
I just think there's a little more of that goes on in the original series than in later series. We're just and I think they're coming to terms with that in Star Trek VI with the Klingons, when they really learn with the Khitomer Accords, they come to terms with the fact that we've been at war, and so there's all this hatred built up on both sides, and now we have to learn to come together. But I'm not saying there's not depth on either on both sides.
I think it's Balance of Terror, the first Romulans, where episodes where the Romulan commander, basically he and Kirk are having a chat, having a little conversation through their strategies, and then and Kirk of course wins, but as the Romulans are about to blow up, the commander says, in another lifetime we could have been friends. I could have called you friend. They have a really cool honor system built in, and then Enterprise incident where you have the female Romulan commander, and they use Spock to sort of get her interested somewhat romantically, but they have a real connection, and they really humanize her in a really cool way, to where it's good stuff.
Cool.
There are definitely those types of villains on the original series that you're talking about.
Right.
I'm just not sure it's the Klingons or the Romulans.
Right. All right. Well, I fully admit that it's been a while since I've seen any Klingon or Romulan episodes. It's just, I guess I remember them as a antagonist, and I'm fully willing, and I think they were an antagonist.
Absolutely.
But I don't remember them humanizing them in that way as much. But it's been a while since I've seen a Klingon or a Romulan episodes from the original series. So, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of one-time. I don't know. Even I just watched the first. I watched The Cage. actually. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because even the aliens on that are trying to put them in a zoo, basically.
Yeah, the Telosians.
Yeah, the Telosians at the end, they're like, well, it didn't work out. I hope you have a great life. Like, they're like, they genuinely wish them well. Like, right. We didn't get to put you in a zoo. You're far too aggressive for our taste. Please enjoy the rest of your lives. It's interesting that even those one-time episodes, some of them, they still try to give them a little bit element of humanity is the wrong word. Sympathy, compassion.
Well, they try to put Vina back together the best they could, and then, you go to the menagerie, and they're like, yeah, Pike is crippled now. He can't do anything. Doctors can't help him. We can give him the illusion of mobility. He can have a beautiful life with Vina, and they, take him back to Talos. So... yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean...
it's just, and that's cool, and I think that, see, it's again. It's just I like when Star Trek is clever, and that's what I come to it for. And there was nothing clever in Runaway. It was an interesting emotional episode, and an interesting exploration of who Tilly is. But there was just no clever solution found. I like when Star Trek puts you in a place where you're like, I can't see an answer to this problem. And then they come up with a legitimate answer that fits for everyone, yeah. And that's life. That's so often the case. There's two options, and you got to think of a way to resolve those options. And sometimes it's just you have to make a choice, and you may have regrets, and that's interesting too. But I like when it's clever. I really like when it's clever, and that's what I want out of Star Trek. And so that's the core of my fears for Star Trek going forward. Is I like when Star Trek's clever, and I don't know that they're doing that yet. Right now, they're trying to make fun television, which I also like, but it's not what I come to Star Trek for. So that's what I meant when I said what I come to Star Trek for. I think we've talked about this episode a lot. Any other final thoughts?
Nah, I don't think so.
All right, guys. Well, we are the Star Trek Universe Podcast. You can find us at StarTrekUcast.com. That's StarTrekUcast.com, the letter U. At StarTrekUcast on Twitter, or you can just search Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. We're at all those places, so whatever you use, find us, and check us out, StarTrekUcast.com. We'll be back with you real shortly with more Star Trek talk.
Yeah. And hopefully it won't be 5 times longer than the actual episode.
Yeah, we got together today. We're just going to talk 10 minutes. We're going to do a quick little cast, and we just got into all of the things that we like to get into. But we hope you enjoyed it. We hope we provided you some thoughtful Star Trek content.
And let us know what you thought.
Yeah, please do. All those places we just mentioned. StarTrekUcast.com. Sorry, it's new to us. At StarTrekUcast on Twitter. Star Trek Universe Podcast at Instagram or Facebook. And just write us a message. Let us know.
Yeah.
Oh, and
let us know what your core fears are about the new Star Trek. Let us know what your Kang fears are about the new Star Trek. I'm sorry.
I didn't like it. We're also at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com, so you can just send us an email, send us a voice memo. We'll probably have a voice phone number next week by then. Yeah. We're gonna try to get all this stuff put together over the coming episodes. So check back with us. We'll be back real soon.
Later, guys.
Live long and prosper. To reach out to us, hit us up at StarTrekUcast.com, at StarTrekUcast on Twitter, Star Trek Universe Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for us there, or send us a message at StarTrekUcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Robertson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv. And if you want to hear more from Matthew Carroll, that's me, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or go listen to my music at MatthewCarrollmusic.com or anywhere you get music.